In 2017, Tristan de Montebello had a chance to compete in the World Championship of Public Speaking. He was in the semi-final round, and if he won, he'd get to the top 10 of the world. And as I was watching him in the audience give his semi-final speech, a crazy thing happened. He blanked. He blanked in the middle of his speech, but he stayed in character. He maintained composure, and he took a deep breath. He scanned the audience, and he waited until the next line appeared in his head, which it did, which gave him the momentum to continue, pick back up, and recover beautifully. So beautifully, in fact, that he ended up winning the semifinal round and got to the top 10 in the world. That's called staying in character. And if he instead panicked or let his insecurities leak out by pacing or having his voice tremble or just going, sorry, what was I thinking right now? Well, that would have ruined the whole effect for everybody, and there's no way he would have won. So, what's the lesson? Well, the lesson is that even at the World Championship level stage, people blank, people lose their train of thought, and people have a lot of inner chaos happening while speaking. But the difference is that they have built up a habit of effective recovery, of staying in character and maintaining composure even when things get difficult. That's what I want to talk about right here, because this is the backbone of building confidence in your speaking. You don't have to feel confident in order to appear confident. In fact, that's kind of the most important step in order to ultimately feel confident. It's the ability to maintain composure even when things get difficult or get messy. What's crazy is that Tristan had this experience happen all the time during his training. He would go up in front of audiences, he would blank, but he had the habit of staying in character. And sometimes he would blank for so long that he'd think, the line's never gonna come to me. But he trained himself to pause during those moments, to breathe and to stand with confidence, looking at the audience, waiting for the line to appear. So much so that he'd have this phenomenon happen where people would come up to him after his speech and go, that pause? That was the most powerful moment of your speech. I felt that. And that created a really interesting idea. The idea that what you feel on the inside is not what people see on the outside. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. The chaos, the turbulence, the loss of words can come across as a thoughtful, meaningful pause, as long as we are able to maintain composure. And it brings this idea that we're not transparent, that people can't see our nervousness unless we show them, unless we have our insecurities leak out. And that's the habit I want to talk about, because I see this all the time with anybody who wants to improve their confidence. Well, it's really easy. I put them in a public speaking scenario. I put them in a little bit of a simulated pressure scenario where they have to speak on the fly. So I know they're unprepared. I know they're probably not feeling very confident, but I try to see, can you play the part? Can you still speak in a way that's confident? Can you own it? And for most people, they can at the beginning. But as soon as they run out of something to say, or they feel like, what they're saying isn't coming out right, there will always be that moment where they interrupt themselves and they go, sorry, I'm totally blanking right now. Or, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about. Or, this isn't making sense. They have these micro habits of shooting themselves in the foot, of telling me, I'm not feeling confident right now. I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling pressure. And that's really normal, but that's a habit that we want to stop, because what if we didn't do that? What if we just spoke and maintained our composure all the way through? Well, what people find out is that at the end of the day, they get perceived as more confident. And that leads to the belief that people are confident by default. There's no reason somebody would assume that you aren't confident or that your speaking has some struggle in it. The only reason they would know is if you show them, and we want to stop showing them so that people can't assume it in the first place. And ultimately, if you keep getting the reflection, hey, you came across as confident, or hey, that was really interesting, well, then you start building up the belief that nobody can know that you're nervous. Nobody's paying attention to that. And if you're perceived as confident, well, then maybe you'll start to believe yourself to be confident, which will ultimately let you to feel confident. But it takes time, and a little bit of this is like fake it till you make it. I get it. But the goal is not to fake it always. The goal is to make it. But part of the way you do that is you show up with your best, most confident self forward. I mean, imagine the tennis player who has had an injury, who didn't get a chance to practice over the last week and still has to show up to the match. They're going to walk out on that court. How? Well, if they walk out with their shoulders slumped and with hesitation, well, then that's probably how they're going to play. And that's because confidence ultimately affects performance. That's why I'm so passionate about this, is because when I put you on the spot or ask you a random question and I know you're speaking on the fly, how you show up to that question is going to affect your performance. You could start strong by having a strong tone of voice, by being able to jump in with certainty, or you can have hesitation and go, well, I don't really know about this topic and I haven't thought much about it, and you're signaling little signs of feeling uncertain about things. And those signs are silent killers of confidence because they signal to your audience, I'm insecure and I want to show you. Think about two pilots. One pilot is experienced, one is not. And both are flying in very stormy conditions, so much so there's this possibility that something might go wrong. Both pilots are gonna feel nervous. That's normal. But the experienced pilot will be able to maintain composure in her voice, in her body language, and in the way that she perceives the situation, and will be able to act in a more controlled and calm manner. The less experienced pilot might feel shaky, might feel like there's no place for this nervous energy to go, and so it kind of escapes through their tone of voice or through their body language or just through how they are expressing themselves in the moment. The problem is not the nervousness. The problem is our willingness and desire to leak the nervousness, to show the insecurities in moments where we don't have to, where we could maintain composure and choose to be confident even though we don't feel it. And that's really important, and it's probably the most important habit in speaking, because once we have a habit of it, well, then we start to realize that all those mistakes that we felt were worth drawing attention to, turns out they weren't. Turns out most people didn't notice them. What we do is we want to have a spotlight on them so that we can break the tension of how uncomfortable it is. Everybody saw me stumble, let me address it. But when we don't address it, well, people don't really pay attention to it. It's like showing up to a party wearing a really loud shirt, a really colorful, vivid shirt that you don't feel comfortable in, but you're trying out for style. The temptation is to want to address it and say to everyone like, hey, yeah, I'm trying out this new style. It's still new to me. I'm just trying to see how I feel in it. You want to essentially give a justification for why you're wearing the shirt. The confident person wouldn't talk about the shirt at all, and they would probably be perceived as more confident. They might even get some compliments on that shirt. It's the same idea. We have this defense mechanism that's built into the human brain to want to I don't know if you've seen the movie 8 Mile, but it's like this famous scene where before the battle rapper has any chance to say something bad about Eminem, Eminem decides to share all his insecurities about himself, pokes fun at himself, and basically takes away everyone else's ammo so that nobody can poke fun at him. It's that same concept of we want to be the ones that bring ourselves down first so that other people won't do it. It's a defense mechanism. It's like painting a picture and having your friends come over and they see this painting, and your first temptation might be to go, that's not finished, or I was just messing around with that. It's to basically say, hey, don't take that too seriously because I don't want you to judge it. But when we do that, we rob people of the opportunity to make up their own minds. And what if your friend goes, whoa, that's really creative, or whoa, where did you buy that? That's really cool. Well, that's interesting, because that might send a new signal to your brain that goes, even when I don't feel confident about my artwork, other people perceive it as good. Whoa, that's strange. Well, it's the same thing in speaking. Even when you don't feel confident about your content or about your delivery, oftentimes people perceive it as valuable information and as confident delivery. But we'll never be able to create that feedback loop if we don't give ourselves the opportunity. If we keep breaking character and essentially telling people, don't perceive this as confident because I'm not feeling confident. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to separate our confidence from everything, from how prepared we feel, from how valuable we think the content is, from how well the speaking is going. If we can separate our confidence from that and just learn to maintain confidence, to stay in character at all times, then we have this little kernel of control where we give the best possible chance to everything that we do. And this applies to speaking, but it also applies to any opportunity. If you get asked to sing on the spot and you're insecure about your singing, what would it look like to just go for it? That's a cool mindset, to just go for it, even if you feel scared or nervous or insecure. And then when you go for it, no matter how it goes, don't draw attention to, oh, I messed up here. My girlfriend in high school would do this all the time. She was in drama in theater, and every time I'd see her performance, I'd go, that was amazing. And she'd go, no. This person went on stage too early. This person forgot their line and totally messed it up, and I didn't hit the notes I wanted to hit. And I'm like, I had no idea. You didn't have to tell me that. Like, it was great from my perspective. Speaking feels the same way. It's so visceral. We have a plan. It never goes according to plan. So there's a million reasons why we shouldn't feel proud of it, why we should feel a little bit insecure about it. But the insecurity is okay. The point is, you don't want to share it with others. You don't need to affect other people's experiences of it, because when you don't, well, people tend to assume that it was good. People tend to assume that it's confident. In fact, speaking is like background music in movies. The truth is, nobody's paying attention to how you're speaking. Truly, they don't notice it unless we draw attention to it. Like, imagine being the composer, watching the movie along with everyone else, looking at like, oh, how are they liking this music? How are they liking this music? No one's paying attention to the music in a movie. They're just watching the movie. But the composer is so attached to the music that they're going to want to be hyper analytical. It's the same in speaking. Sometimes people ask me for feedback like, hey, how did that go? How was my speaking? And I was like, I wasn't paying attention to your speaking. I was just paying attention to what you were saying, and what you were saying was great. But having to analyze your speaking now, let me think about it. No one is paying attention to how you're speaking, except for you, because you're the one doing it and it feels messy. So staying in character is this healthy habit of learning to detach from your speaking, of just deciding, I'm going to maintain confidence even when things get difficult. I'm just going to put on a confident exterior. And what you'll notice is then people will reflect that confidence back to you, and you'll start to get feedback of, you came across confident. I mean, people get this feedback all the time in the Ultraspeaking courses. And at first they think, oh, people are just being nice to me. This is a very supportive community. But then they notice themselves giving that same feedback to others, like, hey, in that speech, you were really confident. I loved what you said. But the person will go, what? I felt super nervous, and that felt like it made no sense to me. And that's when it starts to click. We start to realize, whoa, nobody really feels that confident. Everybody feels like they're improvising, and yet they look so confident. They appear so poised. Why is that? Well, it's because people aren't transparent. They look confident by default, and the only way that you might suspect that somebody isn't feeling confident is if they show you. If they show you by leaking their insecurities, by apologizing, by bringing attention to their mistakes, and by what we call breaking character. But if you don't do that, if you stay in character as much as possible, you start to reinforce that identity of somebody who maintains confidence. You'll start to get that reflected back at you as like, whoa, that was really confident. Your ideas were really valuable. And you begin to reshape your identity as somebody who is confident. And when that happens, you start to feel confident. And when that happens, you stop thinking about confidence altogether, and you just show up as yourself, speaking and knowing that no matter what happens, it's going to be fine. It's going to be perceived as just fine. But I know that's the destination, and if you aren't there, that's totally okay. There is a path for you. That's what Ultraspeaking is about. It's about learning how to get from A to Z, and we've built that path through our courses. The fundamentals course, probably the most important one, because by the end of that course, you'll never break character in your life. That's the real focus of it, is it's putting you in a simulator. It's putting you in simulated pressure in scenarios where there's no reason why you shouldn't break character. It's just so much uncertainty. But practicing the much healthier habit of maintaining composure, being with the discomfort, and going through the reps and appearing confident. When you're able to do that, in your practice. You're going to be able to do it in the presentation, in the meeting, on the date, and anywhere in between, because you realize that confidence is totally within your control. It's all about how you recover, and it's all about how you show up, and it's ultimately a mindset, and that mindset takes time to build, but it's definitely buildable, and it's easiest to build when you build it with other people, whether that's through a course or through a class or through any other organization. If you want to build your confidence, practice with other people, get feedback, and integrate what you're learning, and you're going to be there on your way. That's what confidence is. It's the ability to show up even when you're a little bit scared, even when you're a little bit uncertain, but owning it, putting your best foot forward and expecting success, and that success will get reflected back at you.